I'm ready when you are.
Assalamu alaikum. How are you?
I'm doing well. Alhamdulillah.
Alhamdulillah. Jazakallah khair for accepting our invitation for MSA MUN. Alhamdulillah.
Can you turn the speakers towards me and louder a little bit so I can hear these guys? Let me know if you guys got any echo or anything. Okay, now say that again.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you really well now. Okay, good.
How are you doing, Ustadh? How is everything over there?
Everything's good. We pretend like there is no COVID.
Alhamdulillah.
That's what we do.
Jazakallah khair for accepting our invitation for MSA MUN. Alhamdulillah. It's been nice and honor for us to have you at MSA MUN. Alhamdulillah.
Hey, can you do me a favor and click continue so I can see the screen? Just click that so that. There we go. Okay. All right. So are we live yet or?
Yeah, I think we are live.
Okay. Mashallah.
So, inshallah.
Okay, so because everything is in order, I think we can start. So, Assalamu alaikum, everyone who is attending from wherever in the world you're attending from. It's great to have you here, and we'll now start this session. So we're the MSA of Memorial University of Newfoundland, and we are delighted to welcome you to the very first interactive question and answer session with Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan. We'll start off with the introductions, of course. So my name is Ghazia Azam. I am an undergraduate student in a joint honors degree at Memorial University, and I've been working with the MSA for about a year. If the other host, Mahmoud Al-Hassan, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so this is Mahmoud Al-Hassan. I recently graduated from Memorial University as a mechanical engineer. So Alhamdulillah, I have been a former MSA president for the last 2 years. It's been nice an honor for me to work to communicate with Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan, to have him today at MSA MUN. Alhamdulillah.
Yeah, that is an amazing event this is. So Mahmoud Al-Hassan has been acting as the liaison to Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan for the MSA. So we're going to start off with the recitation of the Holy Quran, of course. And for that, I'll be reciting Surah Baqarah, verses 284 to 286. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم لله ما في السماوات وما في الأرض وإن تبدوا ما في أنفسكم أو تخفوه يحاسبكم به الله فيغفر لمن يشاء ويعذب من يشاء والله على كل شيء قدير آمن الرسول بما أنزل إليه من ربه والمؤمنون كل آمن بالله وملائكته وكتبه ورسله لا نفرق بين أحد من رسله وقالوا سمعنا وأطعنا غفرانك ربنا وإليك المصير لا يكلف الله نفسا إلا وسعها لها ما كسبت وعليها ما اكتسبت ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Now the translation for that is to Allah for the first verse, 284. The translation is, to Allah belongs whatever is in the heavens and whatever is in the earth. Whether you reveal what is in your hearts or conceal it, Allah will call you to account for it. He forgives whoever He wills and punishes whoever He wills, and Allah is most capable of everything. The messenger firmly believes in what Allah has revealed to him from his Lord, and so do the believers. They all believe in Allah, His angels, His books, and His messengers. They proclaim, we make no distinction between any of His messengers, and they say, we hear and we obey. We seek your forgiveness, our Lord, and to you alone is our final return. Allah does not require of any soul more than what it can afford. All good will be from its own benefit, and all evil will be from its own loss. The believers pray, our Lord, do not punish us if we forget or make a mistake. Our Lord, do not place on us a burden like the one you have placed on those before us. Our Lord, do not burden us with what we cannot bear. Pardon us, forgive us, and have mercy on us. You are the only guardian, so grant us victory over the disbelieving people. Now that we're done with the recitation, I'm going to hand over the mic to Mahmoud Hassan to introduce the Ustadh, and then we can reiterate the event, after which we will start.
Thank you, Sister Garcia. So, Alhamdulillah, we have Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan. I don't think we need any kinds of introduction for him, but as a formality to just introduce him for the event. So Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan is an American Muslim speaker, a true legendary, a role model for many youth, and an inspiration for many of us. He has been named as one of the most influential Muslims in by the Royal Islamic Strategic Studies Center of Jordan. Alhamdulillah, he is a founder of the Bayana Institute, which is an amazing resource for those looking to studying the Quran and Islam as a religion, or to study Arabic as a language. Surely most of us have seen his lectures at some point and have learned from him many valuable things. We now have the opportunity to personally interact with him. He wants to speak with the community, the students community, and the local community, and we're pleased to facilitate that from MSA MUN, alhamdulillah. So I'll just hand over the mic to Sister Gazia to just discuss some of the rules, and then we'll just go with the Q&A session, inshallah.
Sorry, I was muted there. So to make sure everything runs smoothly, I request that the audience keep their microphones muted and their videos turned off unless asked to unmute or turn on their video by the host. The Q&A will start with a few general questions that will be from the MSA itself, and then we'll move on to questions from audience members. Audience members, the questions are selected and they will be presented to the Ustadh directly, or they can request another MSA representative to ask the question on their behalf. We may not be able to accommodate everyone because of limited time, and we apologize if we're unable to take your questions, but we'll try to manage with the time we have in the best way possible. Now we'll proceed to the main part of the event, which is the question and answer session. So the first question is a general question that will be asked by an MSA member. So Akhil Muhammad, if you can go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustadh. It's an honor to meet you. I'll start off with my introduction. I'm Akhil Muhammad, serving as the president of the Muslim Student Association at MUN. So I'll rightly go to the question now. In recent time, a portion of Muslim youth is becoming increasingly interested in learning about Islam, but they dedicate significant time and energy debating about opinions and about which sheikhs to follow. Shall we, as Muslims, try to understand and implement Islamic teachings directly from the Hadith, or should we implement the interpretations of these teachings from ulama in our lives? Where would you advise? What would you advise a young person with basic knowledge of deen to start? And are there any specific resources you would recommend?
That's a phenomenal question. Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Let me first be empathetic and say that's not an easy space to navigate. So you're trying to learn your religion. You know, societies in the past, one form of oppression used to be the control of information. So not everybody had access to knowledge. And that was done deliberately as a means of control over populations. So for instance, in some history of Christianity, access to the Bible was limited by the Catholic Church, and only the ordained had access to the sacred word. We're living in quite the opposite times. We have over access. We have access to virtually every opinion, every interpretation, and there's an overload of information. So it can be quite overwhelming to try to figure out which way to go. And this is a question that isn't just something that I'd like to talk to you about, like I have the answer and you guys need to listen to my answer. I've been on the receiving end of this question for myself. When I was a college student, I was in New York City, and there were, even at the time, it were over 150 different masjids in New York City. And depending on the masjid you walk into or the speaker you're listening to, you're getting a completely different Islam. And each one of them claiming that they have the right understanding of the religion. So that's not something new that's risen today. It's actually an ongoing problem. It's only become more difficult now because information, lectures, resources, articles, papers, all of that's even more accessible now than it ever was, even when I was younger. So how do you navigate all of this? First and foremost, let's take a step back. Allah is our guide. We acknowledge that every time we recite the Fatiha and we say, Ihdina Siratal Mustaqim. Every time we recite that, we have left humanity behind. Everything else and everyone in our life is in the background, and it's just us and Allah, and we're asking Allah to guide us. When a person sincerely asks Allah to guide them, then our conviction is Allah will not leave a person like that misguided. So there's a spiritual component to this that needs to be very, very clear. It's not, if I follow this sheikh, I'll be misguided. If I follow this book, I'll be guided. If I don't do this, first and foremost, what conversation are you and I having with Allah? And only Allah knows that, and you know that. That's a conversation that nobody else has access to. And that's the most important part of this conversation. The second component of this conversation, at least for me, I can tell you what I did. I don't know if this is the right way to go or the wrong way to go, but it worked for me. So I can share with you what worked for me. I developed a litmus test. And my first litmus test was, if there's a group whose obsession is to prove the wrongness of another group, then I want nothing to do with them. Even if they're right, I just don't want anything to do with them, because their entire energies are focused on the negative. They're focused on everything Islam is not. They're actually less interested in teaching me what Islam is. They're entirely exhausting themselves and want me to be exhausted in understanding why this person is not entirely on Islam, and that book isn't exactly pure teachings of Islam, and that author isn't exactly Islam. So it's all the things that Islam is not that are being studied. And once you get locked into that mindset, you can spend years not learning much, but actually just helping point out why a whole bunch of people are wrong, right? So it's just a way of refutation. It's a refutation kind of culture, right? And it takes different forms. It's not one group that does that or one kind of thinking that does that. It takes multiple forms, but the basic, characteristics are the same. There's a group that says we have the authentic understanding. Here are the few people that you can trust. Nobody else can be trusted. And therefore, and if you really want to learn Islam, then you have to go through these channels. So that's one side of the equation. On the other side, even if you don't fall into that trap, and at the end of the day, you are going to run into differences of opinion. There are multiple ways of looking at almost every issue that at least affects our daily lives, right? So in fiqh matters, there are tons of differences of opinion. The problem for me became, what am I really learning here? What do I really want to learn? At the end of the day, the Quran is actually the message that was given to the people in Mecca who had no background in anything, and they were given this word as their exposure, right? This was enough for Umar to leave his shirk, and this was radiallahu anhu, and this was enough for the Sahaba to leave whatever cultures they came from, and for rabbis to leave teaching Judaism and accept Islam, like Abdullah bin Salam radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So my priority then became, well, I don't want to just refute any other area of learning, but I do want to make a priority out of studying the Quran. And if I end up spending a year supposedly learning Islam, and I know how to quote a bunch of scholars and what they said about this group or that group or the other group, but I still don't know what Surah Al-Baqarah says, and I have no idea what Ali Imran is about or Nisa is about, which is the message to humanity. I don't even know what that's about, then I don't know how that's Islam anymore. Or I don't know if that's the Islam that I want in my life. So that's the priority. It's not the rejection of the study of hadith or the rejection of the study of fiqh or aqid or any of the other sciences. But for me personally, it became so crucial to want to know, really understand Fatiha and really understand Baqarah and really understand Ali Imran and Nisa and so on and so forth, and just carry on just exhausting myself in Allah's word. And the beautiful thing is then the other areas of Islamic studies, whether they're jurisprudence or their hadith study and other areas of study, you end up having to learn them as you go. But you learn them in the shade of the Quran. So for me, it was kind of an unconventional kind of approach, because anywhere you went to try to study seriously, they would either tell you, you have to study this subject. Don't start with Quran, start with this subject, then this subject and this subject. When you've mastered this, then maybe you can think about studying the Quran. And I respectfully disagreed. And I said, no, I want to start with the Quran, and everything else will be illuminated by the study of the Quran. That became my mindset. I didn't go around criticizing other people's approaches, but I just knew that's the approach that I'm going to take. The other thing interesting thing that happened as a result is that there were, I was in an MSA just like you guys are, right? And I had friends just like you guys have friends. And we're all listening to lectures and attending programs and events and things like that. And we're all learning. But I decided to, zone in on this one focus. And kind of, even though I listened to other things, I wasn't studying other things. I was studying this. I was studying Arabic. I was studying Quran. I was starting to understand how tafsir works. And as I was doing that, those other friends of mine, they were listening to everything everybody was saying. Like they were listening to all kinds of different lectures. And it's sad, but true, in a couple of years, I could actually show my progress, right? I'm still working full time. I'm in university. I can show my progress that, okay, now I have a decent understanding of Ali Imran, or I have a pretty decent understanding of Surah Fussilat or something. And those guys were practically where they were a couple of years ago, just better at arguing them. To me, that personally made me sad. So now comes the final part of this question: who do you trust with opinions? I think the biggest component of this has to be humility. I have to be able to acknowledge that I don't know enough to be able to hear someone say that this and this position is correct or this and this position is incorrect based on these books and these resources. When they give a technical argument, I don't have the first-hand knowledge to say this is absolutely correct and that's absolutely wrong. And if I humbly accept that, then I accept that whenever there's a major difference of opinion, especially when it comes to things like hadith, right? So how do you interpret a particular hadith? What is this hadith actually telling us? The question you asked was, do you follow the scholars? Do you follow what the Quran and the Sunnah are saying, essentially, right? Well, the scholars, what are they doing? What are scholars like Ibn Hajar Asqalani and others, what are they doing when they approach a hadith? They're trying to decipher, when did the Prophet say this, sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Who did he say this to? How was it understood? How was it implemented in the city of Medina? And how did other statements of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that look like they're contradicting this one, how are they understood at the same time this one is being followed and those are being followed? These are complex questions and they require research and scholarship. So the idea to think that, either you follow the Sunnah or you follow the scholars, to me became very clear that that's just a slogan and it's utterly ridiculous. The purpose of scholarship is to actually do authentic research on the subject of Quran and Sunnah, and for you to have access to that research. So maybe I should be more focused on empowering myself to be able to become capable of doing that kind of research, or to be able to become a more informed consumer of my religion, right? So last comment about this, because I don't want the entire session to be about this, is as follows. I think that you guys are in university, you're studying engineering, you're studying the medical sciences, you're studying accounting, whatever you're studying, right? And you have some textbooks that you're following that are leading authors in the field, right? Leading researchers have produced work that you're studying, right? And even though their work may not be perfect, there may be an update coming in the next 10 years. And what you're studying right now might become outdated. It's possible. But if somebody comes to you and says, are you going to follow physics or are you going to follow your professor? No, I'm following my professor because he's done a lot more work in the field of physics than I ever have. And maybe eventually I'll learn more than he does. But it's a silly thought process, right? That thought process is problematic. So the more I became sort of independent in my thinking, the more it gave me respect for scholarship, actually, instead of a disregard for scholarship. And that's one thing we should all have. We should become more informed consumers. At the level that you are, I say start with the Quran, start with some fundamental books. If you like my recommendations, I like Fiqh al-Islam by Dr. Akram Nalvi for your personal Islamic life. He's just take some of the most common issues that we have every day and how do we approach them. And he's, even I think he's working on his 3rd volume, where it's been released already. And it's just your everyday Islam for your personal life, but for your thought, for your understanding of the religion and your understanding of the worldview of Islam, 2 things should go hand in hand. You should immerse yourself in the study of the Quran and the study of the life of the Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And as you're doing that, the other areas, other crucial areas like hadith and fiqh and things like that, they will come in their place as you progress, inshallah ta'ala. That would be my advice.
You're muted. You shouldn't.
Yeah. So the next question will be asked by Brother Fahim. I'll just ask Brother Fahim to just go forward. Thank you.
Go ahead, Fahim.
Assalamu alaikum. My question, yes, my question to Ustad is, we see that quite a few Muslim students travel to Western countries as international students to build their futures, and they want to get updated in their future lives. But I mean, when they are finishing their studies, they end up configuring to the non-Muslim culture of alcohol and drugs and trade their hereafter for orderly environment. So my question is to you that what advice would you give to this Muslim youth? In addition to that, what advice would you give to the Muslim to turn into not themselves turn into the alcohol or drugs? Like, how can they keep themselves from their non-Muslim culture and keep focus on the Muslim culture and practice their Islam and go with the, flow?
It's a really good question also. I think that if you're thinking that this is a battle of cultures, then a traditional culture will always lose. The world is modernizing. And a student is finding themselves coming from a very conservative village or city or family where everything was very restricted and confined, and all of a sudden they find themselves floating in space. There's drugs in the same dorm room as them, right? It's a sexually promiscuous society, and everything is open and free, and there is no right and wrong. Nobody's guilting you about anything. The moral compass is completely gone. Right, and you're in this in a new environment where you holding on to your values makes you the strange person. So what used to be sinful is now celebrated, and what used to be looked up to is now considered strange and out of place, right? And human beings have a tendency, we want to fit in. We don't like to be the strange one on the outside. We want to belong. Human beings have a natural tendency to want to belong, and now you find yourself in a new world where clearly you came here for your studies or your work or whatever else, but you don't feel like you belong. And in order to belong, it's not like somebody turns to alcohol or drugs and other haram things overnight. It's just that they wanted to fit in, and they went with the guys to the bar one night and they just had a sip of water. They didn't drink anything. And the next time they got a Coke or something. And then it just it goes one little step at a time, right? It doesn't happen overnight. Now, there are some people who couldn't wait to leave Pakistan or Bangladesh or Cairo, or they couldn't wait to leave because they've been wanting to party all this time, but their uncle wouldn't let them, right? And now they get here and they're like, so I'm not talking about those guys or girls. They were going to do what they were going to do. Their hearts had already surrendered to that kind of rebellion to begin with, right?
Yes.
It's not like they're hopeless, but that their intention is something else. But there are people who slip, and over time their guard goes down. They start deteriorating in the safeguards they had in place, right? And I believe those are the students that you're asking me about, right? So what can they do? To me, I think we have to, if we don't realize that our Islam is not our heritage, our Islam it has to be rediscovered by us. Like you have to, in a sense, become Muslim all over again when you're in this environment. Because when you were in an Islamic or conservative or traditional environment, you didn't have to hold on to your Islam. Your environment was holding on to Islam, right? And now you're not in that environment. So the only one that can hold on to Islam is you. But if the only anchor you had, the only thing holding you to your religion was the people around you, the sound of the adhan, the halal food everywhere, the conservative family values, if that was the thing that was holding your Islam together, then your Islam is a product of your environment, not you. It's not yours. It belongs to that environment. So if you take yourself out of that environment, then your Islam got left behind. And here you are. And if you start feeling that Islam is getting shaky because the environment has changed, that means that that Islam didn't have deep enough roots, right? Because if our religion is Hindu kids born in India, Buddhist kids, if they're raised in a Buddhist family or a traditional Hindu family, right? They're Hindu because they were raised in a Hindu family or they were born in a Buddhist country or whatever, right? You can argue the same with Muslims. I'm Muslim because I was born in a Muslim country. I was raised in a Muslim family. But why am I a Muslim? The answer to that was okay so long as you were in that environment. But the moment you came in this environment, you have to come up with a new answer to that question. Why am I a Muslim? Now that the answer, because I come from a Muslim family, because I belong to Muslim culture, because I come from a Muslim country, those answers are not enough. They are simply not enough. Now it has to be, I am Muslim because I'm convinced of Islam. I'm Muslim because I believe, I have absolute conviction that this Quran is not man-made. That this man named Muhammad, first of all, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, is not a fiction. He's in fact a real human being, and he's not a liar. That he didn't come up with something on his own, that this was given to him by revelation. That there is such a thing as a God. And he does speak directly with us. These are pretty heavy claims to really revisit yourself, right? But if you and I don't revisit this conclusion and strengthen our foundation, first, there's that intellectual foundation, then it's really, I think of it as you have the foundation of a building and you build a building on top of it, right? The foundation of our Islam cannot be our origins. The foundation of our Islam must be our intellectual conviction. And on top of that, you build your spiritual strength. On top of that, the prayer will help you. On top of that, the recitation of Quran will help you. On top of that, good company will help you. But if that foundation isn't there, then you can do spiritual practices and still keep messing up, right? Because the spirituality is not built on top of it's not asluha sabit wa faru'uha fis sama. Quran says that la ilaha illallah is like a tree, the roots are deep and the branches go into the sky, right? And that's actually one of the things that that was my first step into serious step into Islam. I was praying and then not praying. I was hanging out with the religious guys, then I was hanging out with the party guys. I was all over the place. And then I got exposed to the Quran in a certain way that it dawned on me, this isn't human. This is just not human. Even though I'm culturally, I'm a believer. Anthropologically, I'm a Muslim. My own claim is I'm Muslim, I believe in God, but it didn't hit here, deep in here, that this is the absolute truth. Until it becomes abundantly clear to them, this is the absolute truth. It is the absolute truth. When that dawned on me, something inside me shifted. Now, I didn't just come here to further, or I'm not studying to further my career. But because that used to be a goal. I want to further my career. I want to get a job. I want to graduate. I want to get a good job. I want to move on in life. I want to be able to have this much money by the time I'm in this age. I want to have these investments. You have these financial goals, family goals. You have these goals. But when this clicked, then these goals were only steps to a much bigger goal. Like if this is the word of Allah, and this is really what was given to us as a mission, then yeah, I still want to be an engineer. I still want to be a PhD in physics. I still want to be a doctor, but I want to be a doctor for a larger reason. I want to contribute to this. I want to be a contributor. This life can't be just about me. And when you realize that, even psychologists now talk about this, right? There are people who live their life for impact, right? Their goal in life is impact. And if their goal in life is impact, then these are the guys that are not partying, even when they're university. Everybody around them is going to the party. They're still working. They're still focused. They'll have a good time here and there, but they're not distracted in life. They have a clear goal, and their goal isn't even graduation, isn't money, isn't prestige, isn't everybody's going to say, I got a master's, and my parents are going to be so proud of me. None of that is significant anymore. They want to lead a life of impact. And that's what this intellectual conviction does. It throws a higher goal. I'll give you an image that I want you to imprint in your mind. Like when you're, imagine a mountain climber, right? And a mountain climber throws a hook up to the closest rock he can get, and then he's going to pull himself up, right? Now, if your hook is only 5 feet above you, the maximum you will reach is 5 feet. But if your hook is 20 feet above, the maximum you will reach is 20 feet. What does the intellectual conviction in Islam do? It makes you throw your hook up into the sky. So while everybody else will I just want to graduate, I just want to get married, I just want to do this, I just want to do this, their hooks are so low. And you're like, I'll get all those things too, but I've aimed so much higher now. I'm going to keep on going. And that keeps a person from not leading a distracted life. Their objectives are clear. And all these, what other people consider major milestones, are just stepping stones to them, because their life is about so much more. When that greater goal, that greater vision concept gets internalized in the depths of your soul, then you're not going to have trouble fighting fitna in university. You have something so much more powerful than your hormonal urges, or your desire to fit in, or your desire to just have a good time, or de-stress. Those things will become so low because you have something so much more powerful. Like the fire of this thinking is so much more intense than any other fire shaitan can put inside you. That's what it does. And really, at the way, if you think about it, the Sahaba were not supernatural human beings. They were normal people. They wanted the same things you and I want. Really. What is it that made them such visionaries? Like, why were they not distracted and slipping the way we slip so easily? What made it like that? You know, there's still blood coursing through their veins. They're still made of the same organic matter. Allah put a ruh inside them. He put a ruh inside you and me. There was something that was at the heart of it. There was a conviction that was at the heart of it that drove everything else. So I say, when you come and you say, I need to hold on to my religion, I'm slipping. If you realize this, then you have to come back to, why am I a Muslim to begin with? And actually, that's why when students come to me and say, I want to study, I want to learn something, well, first build your intellectual foundation. We're going to think about learning Islam. Everything else about Islam can come. Build that intellectual foundation first, and then we'll build a spiritual foundation on top of that. And to me, for myself, that intellectual foundation was actually the life of the Prophet ﷺ, and it was just the miraculous nature of the Quran. Like, that's why I wrote the book Divine Speech and did those seminars, because they transformed me. Like, just understanding that stuff was transformative to me, so I wanted to share that with everybody else. Look, this is why I absolutely believe it can't be human. And here's why, you know? So I hope that helps with that question, inshallah.
Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. So the next question is more related to what Brother Fahim mentioned. So one of the most concerning thing that we face in our community is we don't have any scholar. Many people who come with a solid background of deen, like sometimes we lose our deen over the period of time, because we don't have like that much gathering of scholars, and like we don't have community like where like we can learn deen. So that makes it very difficult for Muslim youth to stick to the Islamic principles. So like, what advice do you give for the MSA or like the student body who are mostly international students, and also for the community people if they are listening to your message? Like,
so my advice to you guys is, go back to the basics. Look, Islam spread very quickly, right? When the Prophet ﷺ, his 23-year mission was over, Islam started spreading like wildfire all over the world, right? And there were places where, I'm telling you, there were no scholars. In the earliest Islam, there were no scholars. There were people that barely knew 2 or 3 surahs. But what did they do? They formed circles, groups of people, that are now teaching each other whatever little they know. And they're focusing on yatadarasunahu bainahum. The hadith says they study the Quran and try to learn it together. Right? What you have to, if you wait for a scholar, let me tell you practically, I know this might sound politically incorrect, but I'll share my views with you as I have them. Scholarship is needed to solve very complex issues. Our religion, at the core of it, is values. It's a fundamental belief system. It's values. It's reminder. It's a support system. That's what it is for the most part. And then there are very complex intellectual issues that are maybe 1 or 2% of this religion. The vast majority of this religion doesn't require scholarship. It requires just adhering to certain principles and having good company, having a company in which you can remind each other. Now, so what if you don't have scholars? In fact, there are many communities that have scholars and nobody listens to them. So nobody cares. Everybody goes online. Like I hate my imam. I don't want to go listen to him. He's boring. That's the story in so many places. So we don't have a scholar in our community. I say to that, so what? I mean, seriously, so what? I didn't have a scholar in my community. I didn't have a sheikh. Even the person I learned Arabic from taught me for 3 weeks and then he left. I had to do it on my own. So what? Learn to be self-reliant. And now you have more resources now than ever before in human history. So to be able to do something productive, how hard is it to say, hey guys, we're gonna, even if don't listen to my lectures, I'm not even pushing my own material or anything. Hey guys, we're gonna study the Fatiha. Here's the English translation of Ibn Kathir's tafsir. Here's some lectures we found on the Fatiha. Here are some translations. Let's do our own reading and let's get together and discuss it. Let's talk it out. And every week we just sit and discuss some Quran and learn something. And you know what? Whenever you get stuck, you have my email address now. Right? And maybe I'll get stuck with your question too. I don't know. I never thought about it. Let me do some research. But you know what? Once you create that circle, what does the Quran, what does the study of the Quran do? It actually brings hearts together. That becomes your support system. It becomes when one of you is faltering and becoming a little weak, they find strength in just being around that kind of company. It brings hearts together. So, and you don't have to get everybody to come. I've talked about this a million times. And just because you have an MSA and you start a circle doesn't mean that the entire MSA is going to join. Like the same 4 people keep showing up, right? You buy a whole pie of pizza and only 3 slices get eaten. That's the story every time. That's okay. Start with 3. Do other events or other programs for the rest. Do something lighter. Maybe they can't commit to a weekly circle. That's fine. Then give them something lighter. So, but do remain active in some way. Keep doing something. And having some sort of a circle and some sort of mutual collaborative study activity, learning activity is actually really helpful. It really, really helps.
Jazakallah khair for sharing the answer.
Thanks for answering that, Jazakallah khair. And now we're going to move on to the audience questions, which are basically questions that were asked by anyone in the audience. So the first question is going to be asked by Brother Emre as an MSA rep. So if you can just take the mic, Brother Emre, then go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, Ustaz. How are you?
How are you?
Alhamdulillah, jazakallah khairan. My name is Muhammad Emre. I live in St. John's, Newfoundland, and I'm picked to ask a question on behalf of a brother. And brother's name is Mahdi Tassin. And his question is that, Ustaz, I've been rejected by Allah in many sectors of life. I still have hope that Allah will grant me something big for all the rejections I had. But in a foreign country like Canada, it is really hard to remain halal and pure. What can we do in here to keep constantly reminding of Allah, and so that our faith is not wasted, so that we won't feel anxious all the time and keep our faith intact? Jazakallah khair.
So there's a lot of pain in that question. And first I want to acknowledge that pain, and I want to pray for you that Allah gives you healing and he alleviates the sense of rejection and anxiety and stress that you're feeling that led to this question. There's something very fundamentally wrong with the way you framed your question, and that's actually part of the root of the problem. People rejecting you, people dismissing you, people closing their doors on you is not the same as Allah closing his doors on you. You're confusing people with Allah. Allah never closes doors on you. Even when Allah closes a door, it's actually to open 10 more new ones. you're not thinking correctly about Allah. So when you say that Allah has rejected me on multiple turns, that's something you have to erase from your mind and heart. That's not what Allah does. Allah does not enjoy inflicting pain upon his servants for no other purpose but to just reject them. The ones that are rejected are the ones that have rejected Allah himself, right? And they have adamantly done so. Am abramu amran fa inna mubrimun. Remember this. There's an ayah, a rough translation would be, have they made up their mind? And Allah responds, then we have made up our mind too. But it's more than that. Abrama in Arabic was used in, in construction. Nowadays we have columns and beams and we bolt them together or weld the metal together. But in old construction, you used to have ropes. So they have the log of wood and the log of wood, and they tie them multiple knots this way, this way, this way, this way. And they coil the rope itself so it's stronger so it doesn't snap. And so instead of cement, it was columns and beams that were tied to each other for long-term durability. And it's not the same as tying your shoes, because when you tie your shoes, you want to undo the knot eventually. But when you do Ibram, you've tied it in a way that your intention is for it to never be undone. Allah said about people who have completely made up their mind and they don't want to hear what Allah has to say. They've rejected Allah entirely. They've rejected him and they've tied up their knot. Like they've made up their mind absolutely. Allah said, fine, now that you've absolutely made up your mind, then I have too regarding your misguidance. Then you don't get the blessing of guidance. Only because you showed me that you've completely made up your mind. You making mistakes, you slipping up, you messing up 100 times doesn't mean that you're done. The fact that you're even feeling bad about it means your heart is still alive. And Allah is still waiting for you to turn back to him and make tawbah to him. And make sincere tawbah to him and ask him to open doors for you. And turn to him and say, Ya Allah, instead of saying, Ya Allah, why are you closing all the doors? Turn to Allah and say, Ya Allah, I know you're the one that opens doors. Ya Allah, I know you will find a way for me. And so this kind of negative thinking may be a result of your loneliness. It may be a result of negative people around you. So my advice to you, first of all, will be maybe you should find some positive people around you and spend some more time with those, even if on the phone, if you can't meet them because of COVID, just be around people that are a positive influence on you. And you can fight some of this negativity. That's actually a bigger fitna for you than anything happening outside. You losing a job interview, you getting kicked out of a university, some marriage proposal didn't work out. All of that is a lesser problem. You becoming hopeless in your heart, that's the biggest problem. Solve that problem, everything else Allah Azza wa Jalla takes care of.
Jazakallah khairan for that answer, Ustad. So the next question is again from an audience member, but she wanted it to be asked anonymously. So we have an MSA representative, Nabiha Ansari, asking the question. So Nabiha, if you can unmute and take the stage.
Assalamu alaikum, Ustad. It's a great honor to speak with you. My name is Nabiha, and I'll be asking a question on behalf of the audience member. She's wondering how can she deal with difficult parents while making sure she doesn't misbehave with them?
That's an open-loaded question and very open-ended and very dangerous question. I'll try to be I don't want to be politically correct. I want to be as direct as possible and as honest as I can be, because these are real life situations, right? And so first of all, everybody's parents are different. Everybody's situation is different, right? So we can't have one answer to this question that fits everybody's life. So, and I want you guys to be careful about that. Don't look for Islamic answers that are generic, that fit your personal specific situation. Sometimes you do need a counselor or counselor's help to figure out your specific situation. And there's a way to do that. The thing you have to remember is, more than anything else, our religion has principles. What are the principles? Kindness, forgiveness, justice, mercy, right? The rights over self, rights over others. Those are some fundamental principles. Those principles, if you're clear about them, then it doesn't matter if there's a difficulty happening in the workplace or in a parental relationship or a marriage or siblings. Bring the principles in to the conversation, and then you'll be able to see how those universal principles will help you specifically in your situation. So let me just give you an example. I don't know when this student, may Allah help you, better your relationship with your parents and ease that difficulty for you. Maybe this will apply to you, and I don't know in what way it will apply to you. So let's just say hypothetically that you have a very abusive mom, or she's just she gets angry a lot and she starts yelling and screaming. and tells you what a mistake you were that you were born, and why couldn't you be, they told me that you died during my pregnancy, but then I don't know how you're still alive, and you're just killing me since the day you were born. And they say all kinds of dramatic things. And the mom keeps saying the most hurtful things. And just every time she opens her mouth, before she opens her mouth, you're like, oh God, oh God, oh God, because there's more hurt coming your way, right? And so what happens in some of these relationships sometimes is you're not taking care of her because you love her. You're not taking care of her or listening to her because you respect her. You're doing the things for her because you're afraid of her tongue, right? So the relationship now is one of fear of not getting more abuse hurled towards you. And then on top of all of that, there is, the Quran says, وَبِالْ وَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا, be the best you can possibly be to both parents, right? And yet one of the parents is really, it's almost like they had no business being a mom or dad. That's how they're treating their child, right? And yet the Quran seems to be, or Islam seems to be tipped in their favor. You have to be the best to me. I could be however I want to you, right? Now, what does that do? If a person finds themselves in this situation, first, what are the checklists? Number one, Allah is watching me before anybody else. So if I try to manipulate Allah's religion to my advantage, Allah knows that before anybody else does. So whatever I hear, whatever I say, you can manipulate it to your advantage. You could, but Allah knows that. So be honest with Allah before anybody else. Be honest with yourself. Then what do? Well, sometimes the best thing you can do is keep a safe distance. Sometimes the best thing you can do is actually not have a conversation. Sometimes when somebody's, even if it's your mom or dad, if they're being abusive, they're hurling abuses, then you can say, I don't think this conversation is healthy, and I'm just going to go to my room, or I'm going to step away from this conversation. And they can keep yelling and saying, how dare you, you're gonna not talk back with us, how disrespectful, etc., etc. If they're actually being abusive, you have the right to step away, and that's you being the best you can be. That's actually ihsan in that context. It's also ihsan because if they're slandering, if they are backbiting, if they're committing other kinds of spiritual crimes, and you don't want to further that conversation, you're saving them from further sin. You understand? So you're actually doing them a favor by ending that conversation. So drawing those boundaries is not a violation of our religion. But you cannot misuse this and say, every time your mom tries to talk to you, I'm not having this conversation. I'm going to save you from yourself. You can't. Now you're just playing with Allah's words. Allah knows what, in رَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا فِي نُفُوسِكُمْ إِن تَكُونُوا صَالِحِينَ فَإِنَّهُ كَانَ لِلْأَوَّابِينَ غَفُورًا. Right after the ayat of parents in Surah Al-Isra, Allah says, Allah knows what's inside yourselves. He knows better. Why would he say that right after talking about the rights of parents? Because things get complicated, right? So that's one side. Being disrespectful, how do you know you're not being disrespectful? Don't raise your voice. Easy. It's not rocket science. Don't raise your voice. Don't be sarcastic. Don't speak to them like you would speak to a friend, or like to somebody else you got angry at. Don't yell, talk down to them. You're always doing this. You're always yelling at me. Leave me alone. Don't do that. No. Why won't you do that? Even though they're doing it, because you're Allah's slave. So even if you're going to draw a boundary, you're going to draw it respectfully. You're going to say, this is making me upset, Mom. I don't think I can talk like this. I don't want to cross the line, so I'm going to walk away, or I'm going to go to my room, or just stay quiet. Then you're not, and they can take your respectful behavior and they can call it disrespect. They can do that. But you can turn to Allah and actually say, Ya Allah, you're witness that I didn't raise my voice. You're witness that I didn't cross a line. You're witness that I used to be an explosive device before this. But I kept this in mind and I didn't cross lines that I've crossed before. I'm controlling myself. If you can have that honest conversation with Allah, then you're not being disrespectful. There's nothing disrespectful about being honest and being silent and speaking the truth. Speaking the truth in a respectful fashion. There's nothing wrong with any of those things.
Jazakallah khair.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair, Ustad, for answering the question. So the next I'll introduce Brother Maruf. And this brother had the opportunity to meet Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan at Texas, I believe. So please, Brother Maruf.
Yeah, assalamu alaikum, Ustad.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? I think it was back in 2018 that I came during Jummah in Euless, the Musalla, and we had a brief chat back then. And I'm very happy to see you being hosted by MSA at the Memorial University. So I see a lot of people have asked you some really heavy questions. So I'll put something on a lighter note that if you could, if there was one thing that you could tell your younger university-going self to follow, what would that be? And I don't mean that to as a personal question, but more as a generic question that would apply to others like us as well.
So Maruf, you asked a very personal question and ended it, but I don't mean it to be personal, but it's like super personal.
Let's just say that what would a hypothetical 20-year-old person who had similar background as you had?
Don't be insecure in any part of your life. Any part of your life. Allah has given you value, and that's not just in one thing or two things. Like you might think you're a good student, but you're a horrible everything else, right? You're unworthy in other ways, right? And this idea of unworthiness is kind of like a disease that afflicts us somewhere inside of us. You know, a young girl can think she's not tall enough, or, you know, fair-skinned enough, or smart enough, or, you know, charming enough, or whatever. There's somehow I'm not enough, right? Or I'm not. You know, a young man can think I'm not intelligent enough. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not talented. You know, I'm not. I don't absorb quickly enough. Other people are ahead of me. You're always living in comparison of some sort, or you're beating yourself up, right? The extreme other end of that is you turn into Donald Trump, and there's nothing wrong with you, and you're perfect, and you're awesome. You know, no matter what happens. That's the kind of self-delusional, kind of self-aggrandizing. But the other side of that, I think, for a lot of Muslim youth is, in fact, that we beat ourselves up a lot. We talk down to ourselves a lot, and we don't hold ourselves in high regard, right? And holding yourself in high regard is actually a very important part of our faith. Not just holding others in high regard, but holding yourself. Respect yourself. Consider yourself valuable in every way, you know? And that's an important bit of advice, because there are lots of reasons in today's life, and really in modern life, even when I was younger, there are lots of reasons to be insecure. Lots and lots of reasons. You're just programmed to be in a state of comparison, or in a state of feeling inadequate. And don't get afflicted by that. Sometimes you're raised by parents, or, you know, a support structure, a family structure, where your confidence is built up. Other times you're raised in a family environment where nobody ever validated you. Nobody's ever said, I'm proud of you. That can happen. Nobody ever said it to you. Like, even if they said it, like they were choking, like it hurt them to say it, right? It's just not what they do. It's just not how we do in our family, or whatever, right? You can have situations like that. And just because nobody's ever been proud of you, nobody's ever validated you, nobody's ever seen the worth in you, right? And of course, we have in many Muslim cultures, if you're the younger sibling, then you're talked down to a lot, right? You're dismissed a lot. And it's just a thing to do. And then we don't spare our daughters. Our daughters are made to feel like they're a burden, often. Inshallah, not in many families, but also in many families, it's true. They're made to feel like they're a burden. And so that will make a person devalue themselves. And it's that lack of value for yourself that actually we have to understand as one of the tricks of Shaitan. Because once he makes you devalue yourself, then the doors to doing lowly things becomes open. Because you consider yourself low to begin with, right? You didn't hold yourself high, so now doing low things and having lower thoughts becomes easier. So protect yourself from that. Respect yourself. I love the awkward silence that follows after my answer.
So I'll just ask one of the question that's also related to the community.
Sure.
So because the Muslim population in the province, in the Newfoundland province, is increasing significantly because of the international students coming to attend university and people coming at work, and the number of youth also increased at large. and their interest for marriage is also has also increased. But
okay, I gotta go.
But the lack of community gatherings and connections, what actions would you recommend for the communities to make a positive change? Because we don't have any community gatherings, people don't know each other. So how can they get into a positive relationship from for a community like this, if we don't have any kinds of connections for people to move forward into?
You know what? We live in one of the most entrepreneurial parts of the world. Genuine thinking, creative thinking, coming up with solutions to problems, creative solutions is actually, one of the defining features of this continent that we're living on, right? You have this problem. It's not that difficult of a problem. If there are no healthy outlets where community is gathering, where people are congregating, where people are getting together, and you're waiting for some larger institution to put that together, why are you waiting for anybody else? Why are you waiting for a taxi? Why don't you just create Uber? Right? You guys have studied disruptive economies, right? There's this disruptive industry. You have established modes by which communities congregate, and now you can create that on your own. You guys, so one of you can take initiative and say, we're going to put this Eid event together. We're going to put this, and it doesn't have to be a matrimonial event. Just put more. What should happen, in my opinion, is there should be more and more healthy community gatherings, educational programs, and there are respectful ways of families meeting each other, individuals meeting each other, finding interest, inquiring more respectfully. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what the Sahaba did. There's no fitna in any of that. Fitna is when you are, and if you're not meeting in spiritually nourishing places, then where are people congregating anyway? You guys come from Muslim families. We come from Muslim backgrounds. We know where do girls get proposals? When they, pretty much deck themselves out and go to a highly inappropriate wedding ceremony. So some guy's mom can look at her like a goat or a sheep and find out her number. Right? That's our process, isn't it? Let's be real. And what I'm saying, we have healthy alternatives. We can, if you're putting together educational programs, community service kinds of programs, and the kinds of people that are coming to those things are people that are actually looking to make an impact. They're like-minded in a sense to begin with, right? They're not coming together for shallow reasons. By the way, if you do that, then a lot of people will come for shallow reasons too, because a lot of good boys are going to be there. So I should send my daughter there. That'll happen too. It's okay. That's okay. But I think that you guys should take the initiative. Don't wait for some community. You are the community. You are the community. You have to do it. If I sat around waiting for, maybe if there was some Arabic institute that could teach me Arabic, then I could learn Arabic. If I could just have like a small patch of desert somewhere here, I could put a palm tree and sit underneath it, and I could learn Arabic. Maybe I could rent a camel, and then I could just say, I'm not waiting for it. Just do it. Do it. Take initiative, and you can, inshallah, and you will. And you tell me all about it later.
Inshallah. Jazakallah khair for your awesome inspiration. So I think that's
my candid, unfortunate, politically incorrect frankness. Yeah, sure. Anytime.
Jazakallah khair for the answer. So the next question is actually from Najib Sharif. So if you would like to unmute and ask your question, that would be great.
Cool.
All right, Assalamu alaikum, Ustadh Nouman.
Hey, walaikum salam.
So my question is related to the topic that we have today. We talked about students being addicted to alcohol, music, drugs, and unfortunately that's our ummah, right? What advice would you give those people who are addicted to come back, right? And not just your advice, but what does the Quran say about addiction? And we know that the Sahaba, some of them were addicted before the Prophet ﷺ, right? So what were the steps like in order to stop addictions?
Okay, it's a fantastic question. What's your name again?
Najib.
Najib, phenomenal question and awesome green screen. Love it. Okay, so So here's my response. Instead of thinking, what does the Quran say about addiction? Because the Quran might talk about one particular kind of addiction. And if I talk about that, then you might assume that the Quran is saying this about all kinds of addiction, which would be problematic. I'd rather take a different approach. I would rather say Allah says, وَيُعَلِّمُكُم مَا لَمْ تَكُونُوا تَعْلَمُونَ. Allah teaches you things that you couldn't possibly have known yourself. What that means is things that you and I and the human race was able to figure out ourselves, Allah did not teach us. So Allah definitely did not teach us heart surgery. Allah also did not teach us addiction recovery. He didn't. Allah also did not teach us, for example, baby, how to take care of a baby. He didn't, because human beings are pretty good at figuring that out, right? So there are things that we can manage, and there's so much work done on chemical dependencies that are formed, neural pathways that are formed with any kind of addiction, gaming addiction, gambling addiction, pornography addiction, alcohol addiction. There's similar neural pathways that are formed, and the road to rehabilitation is actually similar in all of them. And just like if somebody said, Ustadh, I have my father has diabetes, what does the Quran say about diabetics? It doesn't say anything about diabetics, but you should go to a specialist and get that treated. And while that's being treated, there's a spiritual remedy, meaning what's the spiritual remedy? My dad, he just loves his chocolate cake. He just needs to have 5 slices of chocolate cake every morning. No, well, maybe dad needs to hear about, وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيا, and he needs to hear the Prophet's words, وَإِنَّ لِجَسَدِكَ عَلَيْكَ حَقًّا, right? And Allah تَطْغَوْا فِي الْمِيزَانِ, meaning your body has rights over you. Don't forget your portion in this life. And Allah loves the balance. And your diet is out of balance. Everything in your life should be in balance, right? So we can go back to those universal principles and apply them to this dad who's diabetic. But even that advice is not, while I'm giving that advice, it does not absolve the need to go to a specialist. So the young men and women that are suffering secretly and ashamed and really developing self-hatred because they can't snap out of the addiction, they need to acknowledge that they have a problem. They don't have to acknowledge that to me or you, but they do need to go get some help privately. And there are professional institutions, Muslim and non, that are ready and willing to help with a problem like this one. And the biggest hurdle in this sometimes is we are too ashamed of ourselves, or we're too proud. Like you're too proud to accept you have a problem, or you're too ashamed to admit the problem. Both of these are ways in which you and I cannot find a solution. If I can be brave enough to say, I have this problem and I need to solve it. I need somebody else's help in solving this problem that I have. I have a tendency, I have a weakness. Nobody else knows about it or others knows, doesn't matter. I know that I have it. I know that I have this weakness. And as embarrassing as it is, as humiliating as it is, Allah didn't open that weakness in front of humanity, but He knows, I know that I have it. I need to do something about it. If you make up that mind that you really, if you don't believe that your addiction is a problem for you, then you won't do anything about it. But if you really do think it's eating away at your life, at your potential, at your future, at your relationship, every relationship, including yours with Allah, then you will take some positive steps. And I think seeking counsel, getting into a rehabilitation program is not beneath you. Do it. Do it for yourself. Honor, this goes back to the first thing I said, honor yourself. Just because you humiliated yourself and degraded yourself and allowed yourself to fall and fall and fall and fall, it doesn't matter how low you fell. Doesn't matter. You can still pick yourself up. The thought of picking yourself up is itself a gift from Allah. Honor that gift and pick yourself up.
Jazakallah khair for that answer, Ustadh. So the last question is actually a question that I had, and it's kind of long, so I wrote it down. So in our Muslim student community, the effects of old school conservatism and sexism are evident, and female members of Muslim student societies usually have less prominent roles or lesser influence. How would you advise that we combat such culturally influenced mindsets? Furthermore, a proportion of Muslims abroad tend to lean towards a problematic and culturally influenced extremist ideology of Islam. Their ideology influences the perception of Islam as a religion in the eyes of non-Muslims. What advice would you give to combat that negative influence?
I never give advice for combating any kind of influence. I don't believe in combating negative influences. I believe in providing alternative influences. I think that we live in a world where conflicting ideas are a reality, conflicting understandings of religion, conflicting understandings of gender roles, now even conflicting understandings of gender identity, right? That's the reality we live in. And in that reality, the only thing that will stand the test of time is the power of your own ideas and the foundation on which they are built. If I believe that somebody else's understanding is extreme, or it's incorrect, or it's skewed one way or the other, or it's culturally biased, then me saying that it's culturally biased is pointless, is worthless. In fact, if the more I call it out, the more they will dig their heels and become even more aggressive, and their job will become to undo what I said. So the counter narrative thinking is actually one that only inflates or inflames conflict. That's all it does. What is far more effective is an alternative narrative. In other words, if you provide an intellectual, thought-provoking, well-researched, well-grounded understanding of the religion that is rooted in our sacred tradition, that's rooted in Islamic scholarship, that's based on sound evidence, and you're presenting it in a way that is empathetic, respectful, and not to deconstruct somebody else's way of thinking, but to just present what you're convinced of. That's all you're doing. That will resonate far more. Look, you and I know the reality is there are people in your family that will never agree with you, no matter what you do, right? So the fact that you have people in your MSA that will never agree with you is okay. That's life. Your job is not to disprove them or to overcome them or whatever. No, it isn't. You know, I've been in the Islamic space for a long time, longer than I care to admit. But yeah, it's 20 some years, 22, 23 years. And all I saw around me was, how do you combat this influence? How do you combat that influence? Or the traditionalist is trying to, counter the progressive, or the progressive is trying to combat this one, and the literalist, and this and that ist, and they're all just at odds with each other. And I'm in the thick of it all, and I'm just saying, yeah, I'm just going to study Quran and provide an alternative. And you know what's crazy about this alternative approach? Like, I'm just going to study Surah An-Nur, or I'm just going to explain what I know of Surah Al-Baqarah, or whatever else. Then people that were on very opposite ends of the spectrum, they wouldn't sit in the same room, are coming and listening to what I'm saying. How? If I was appealing to one kind of, I was trying to refute one group, or disprove one group, or undercut their influence, I don't care to. I just care to share what I think is valuable. And that's really what you should be doing. And men and women, my advice to you is the same. I don't even distinguish when it comes to this advice. What will stand the test of time, and what will make your service, because your job is not to be influential, your job is to serve. What will make your service shine is when you stop thinking about what anybody else thinks. You're just doing your thing, and you're going to kill it doing it. I'm so reminded in my own career, I really wanted to. I just knew I had something when it came to teaching Arabic. I believed that in myself. And I went to this other city that shall not be named. I was like, yeah, I'm thinking about opening up a campus. And that's several years ago, before when being a campus was an idea, it wasn't a thing. And the guy said, yeah, the guy told me, we already have plenty of Arabic education programs, and there are Arabs teaching it, and I'm pretty sure they know a lot more Arabic than you. So I'm pretty sure, and you don't even have a degree in Arabic or anything like that. So you're just wasting your time, bro. What are you even doing? Right? There are people with more influence, more credentials, more background, more experience. Yeah, and I don't have to start my advertisements by saying join Baina because that school stinks or they're no good. I don't have to do that. I just have to do something that can stand on its own. I have to do something that somebody benefits from and says, oh, I think my cousin can benefit from that too. My uncle would love this too. My sister would love this too, right? So they see value in it, not at the expense of something else. Develop that mindset and you have nothing to combat. You have absolutely nothing to combat. Just do your thing. And resistance it comes with life. Whenever you're doing anything meaningful, it will come with resistance. The final advice will be that sometimes I believe that somebody else is extreme, or somebody else is narrow-minded, or I believe that somebody else is liberal or too progressive, or they're bending the laws of Islam to cater to their cultural, norms. or they're modernizing the religion. So I could either think somebody's too hardline or too soft, right? And I can have those views. You know, one thing I should have before any of those, I should have in me the conviction and the humility to know I could be wrong about what I think. That person that seems really liberal, they might be onto something. They might have evidence for what they're saying. They may have substance to their ideas. And this person that I think is really narrow-minded and backwards and they don't represent Islam, maybe 2 things don't add up, but the other 8 things have substance to them. In our opposition to someone, we want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We want to take everything they ever had to say and it's entirely wrong. That's not our religion either. I can disagree with someone on one thing and still agree with them on 9 other things. I can disagree with someone in 9 things and still agree with 1 thing. So we have to be intellectually and consciously honest with ourselves about where our disagreements lie, and that conversation becomes impossible. Intellectually honest disagreement becomes impossible when you start labeling people. If I label someone as, you know, a traditionalist or a conservative or a sexist or a liberal or a progressive, when I start labeling people, then I'm not questioning 1 or 2 ideas. I'm questioning their identity as a whole, and their entire being is being dismissed or being put in a cage. Human beings can't be put in a cage. Part of me is very conservative. Part of me is very open-minded. Part of me is, you know, very forward-thinking. Part of me is very backwards. Part of me is very Pakistani. Part of me is very American. What we like to do is we like to put people in, you know, these black and white categories. It makes it easier to pass judgment, doesn't it? And that's what the political world does now. Either you're a Democrat or you're a Republican. Either you're pro this or you're pro that. You have to pick a camp, and that becomes your litmus test. That becomes your loyalty test. Where do you stand on this one issue? Because of your opinion on this one issue, now we define the rest of you as being, as your entire existence has now been defined. This to me is absolutely absurd and ridiculous. Don't allow yourself to fall into that trap, and don't accept others to put you in that kind of a trap. Speak for yourself and think for yourself.
Thank you so much, Ustad, for answering the question. So can you ask 1 last question from the audience, if you have time, inshallah?
So I'm gonna ask a question.
No. Well, I'm just asking you, like, can you allow 1 more question from the audience?
I can allow 1 more question. Yes.
Yeah, Jazakallah khair. So inshallah, Sister Naushin will go ahead with the question. Sister Naushin.
Thank you for allowing me the question. So my question is, if there was one thing, it could be a course in the or outside, or it could be a book. If there was one thing you would suggest us as university students to start studying right now, someone who does not have any background in Arabic other than just reading it and reciting it, what would that be?
Oh my God, that's a hard one. What do I tell you to do? Okay, so one thing, if you get the time, then listen to my explanation of the Fatiha that's on YouTube. It's extremely long and boring. It's 2.5 hours long, I think. But just listen to that. Just if you get time. There's plenty of readings I can recommend to you and stuff you can do, but Fatiha is pretty good. Then of course, when you're done with that, you can listen to, you know, a better speakers, scholars, books on the same subject, but spend some time with the Fatiha. Like when I say study Quran, don't even make it about the 600 and some page mushaf. Just, okay, Fatiha, right? And give it a month or 2. Just spend some time with the Fatiha. It can be transformative. It's a really rewarding experience to spend time with it. You would think it's just these small ayat. They have a revolution in them. Okay. Nice question. It's really nice meeting all of you. And inshallah, hopefully when this COVID thing is over, I can come hang out with you guys.
Inshallah, Ustad. Jazakallah khair. So we have one last thing. That's the raffle that we mentioned in our program, that will select 3 people from the audience and give them your first published book, Divine Mercy. So if you just hold just a couple of minutes, brother, our webmaster will be just doing the raffle. So you can just mention the name, inshallah.
Where did you guys even get this? You know, the TV screen is like 15 feet away from me.
So the first one, I think it's brother Hassan Zaman. This one, Sister Anamika Purni. Okay, last one is Aisha Hassan.
Okay, now I can see. Hassan Anamika?
Hassan Zaman.
Yeah, I can't see the rest because your camera stuff.
Okay.
Can you move it over?
Brother Ruhul, can you just move the screen to the left, or?
Yeah, you move it to the left. And enlarge it just a little bit more. I'm old. Yeah, your camera boxes are on the right side, so it's behind it. So what are you guys' majors, by the way, while we're waiting for this?
So I did mechanical engineering, alhamdulillah, from MUN.
There we go. Hassan Zaman, Anamika Purni, and Aisha Azam.
So inshallah, they will get the first published book.
And what else? Tell me all of you. I want to know. I'm curious.
Yeah, I think the other members can just go ahead very quickly, just give their short details.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a joint honors student in cell biology and biochemistry, hoping to go into a medical and doctorate degree. So yeah.
MashaAllah.
Janet, you want to go next? Oh, sorry, you go next.
Oh, okay.
Computer engineering.
Say that again.
Computer engineering.
Okay. MashaAllah.
I'm Jannat Naveed. I'm in the last year of my degree. I'm doing a joint honors in neuroscience and biochemistry.
Nice. You guys are. And then finally?
I think it's me.
Yes, it is you.
So I'm doing mechanical engineering here at MUN. I'm in my third year. I'm about to graduate in 2 years, inshallah.
I feel really stupid in your company, all of you guys.
So one last thing is I'll just introduce Brother Ryan. He is a very big fan of you, and he actually motivated me to contact you. So make dua.
So this is all Ryan's fault. Thanks, Rayan. Thanks a lot. No, really.
So Ustad, we'll just conclude the event. We thank everyone for your presence and participation. There are a couple of messages of appreciation for Ustadh Nouman Ali Khan. I'll just read out them from the audience. One of the sisters, she mentioned that I just wanted to tell you, I came to Islam through your videos. I had grown up as an atheist because before Allah guided me, and I genuinely wanted to thank you for that. If you have any contact, like it would be great to have, like, just to follow up. So we'll just refer about the Bayana Institute, inshallah.
You can give my email address, that's fine.
Inshallah. And another person mentioned that, Assalamu alaikum Ustad, my mother listens to your words much frequently. Those gave her inspiration and strength so many times, and she had a beautiful smile on her face. Subhanallah. I love you for the sake of Allah, as you make my Jannah in this world more beautiful this way. may Allah bless your mother who has raised you, nourished you.
Ameen,
And
ameen.
also, I'm your Arabic course student. I get closer to Quran to Allah by your lesson. May Allah reward you, keep you close to Him. May Allah allow us to meet with the Rasulullah Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam in Jannatul Firdaus along with our family. Jazakallah khair. And of course, Nouman Ali, Ustad, last thing, if you have any final remark for us as a student or to the community, like, please go ahead as a final remark.
I mean, I've had lots of remarks for you guys. First of all, I'm very proud of the work that you guys are doing. You could be spending time and energy doing, so many different things, but you're choosing to use your time to serve Allah's deen and raise its awareness and have gatherings where He can be remembered and His word can be celebrated. So, I congratulate you on having that desire inside of you. That's a gift from Allah Azza wa Jal. You guys are going to graduate and you're going to be, people of influence in your families. You're going to be people of influence in your workspaces, in your communities. And you must remember that comes with a great deal of responsibility, that you are in positions of leadership. Even if you're not holding a microphone and doing lectures, you are in fact in positions of leadership. And your goal in life is to leave impact, and to leave an impact that can become a sadaqah jariyah for you and your families and this ummah. So carry that with you, inshallah. And I pray that Allah allows you to excel in your studies and really go further than anybody else in the accomplishments you will have in your careers. And more than all of that, that you guys do in fact leave legacies of wonderful impact in the world.
Jazakallah khair. It has been a great honor for MSA MUN to have you here
The
today,
honor is
alhamdulillah, and we hope to have you among us in person someday, inshallah.
Yeah, inshallah.
And alhamdulillah, you're truly an inspiration and a message for many people like us, and we are constantly learning from you. Jazakallah khair also for your time today, and we really appreciate you. Assalamu alaikum.
Quite a bit. Take care, you guys. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.